Hey, what's going on, you guys? This is Gabe on Music, and I'm here to share with you my rankings of the Weezer albums. Now, Weezer is my favorite band, and they have meant a lot to me over the years. And a reminder, these are solely my opinions, and I would love to see your rankings in the comments. Now, I am only including 4 more releases, not B-sides, so stuff like Death to False Metal will not be included in this ranking. So, without further ado, let's get into number 13, which is the Teal album. The Teal album is a covers album they released shortly before the Black album in 2019. There are some decent covers, but none are better than the originals. Honestly, you're better off just listening to the originals. The standout track for me on this covers album is their take on Me by Aha. The big single off the album, though, was Africa, which reached number 3 on the US Top 40 charts. Honestly, I think the song is okay, but the problem with a lot of the album, it doesn't come close to reaching the original. Overall, I give the album a 5 out of 10. It's not terrible, but to me, it seems very unnecessary. Coming in at number 12 is Ratitude. Now, I gotta be honest with you guys, I used to love this album, but over the years, I have changed my tone. There are many weak tracks, including In the Mall, Can't Stop Partying, featuring Lil Wayne of all people, and Tripping Down the Freeway. I still have a soft spot, though, for tracks like I Want You To and I Don't Want to Let You Go, but that's not enough to make me seek out this album. Many Weezer fans loathe this album, and honestly, I see where they're coming from. This album has its moments, but overall, I would give it a 6 out of 10. Moving on to number 11 on my list, we have the Black Album. The second entry from 2019 on the list, the Black Album was hyped for a very long time. Continuing with the direction they went on Pacific Daydream, which we'll talk about soon, they went in a very poppy direction. There are very few whiny guitars involved, which is one thing that I personally tend to love from Weezer. It's mostly forgettable with a few standout tracks such as California Snow and High as a Kite, which is my favorite song on the album. But the problem is, once you get past the first couple tracks, tracks 5 through 9 are usually tracks that I skip and they don't offer much to the listener. Honestly, I'm highly anticipating the Van Weezer album, which is coming soon, and they just keep pushing it back, but I am highly anticipating it, and I kind of want it to wash the taste of this album out of my mouth. Now, it's musically fine, but it's really not what I look for in a Weezer album. I give it a 6.5 out of 10 and would really only recommend this album to completionists and hardcore fans of this band. Coming in at number 10 is Pacific Daydream from 2017. This album has a very Beach Boys chilled vibe. In fact, they even have a song on it called Beach Boys, which I gotta be honest, is pretty different. Now, this is miles above the Black album, but it still isn't what I would call great. I really enjoy the songs Weekend Woman and Get Right off the album. Some of the weaker tracks are QB Blitz and Happy Hour, which was for some reason released as a single. I'm not totally sure why. This album lacks the crunchiness I come to expect from a Weezer album, and it is a little too laid back for my taste, although it's not terrible. This has a lot of the feel of the White Album in its beachy vibes, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but that's not always a good thing. We'll talk about the White Album in a little bit on this list, but for now, I give Pacific Daydream a 7 out of 10. Taking the number 9 spot is Hurley. The 2010 release was their only release with independent record label Epitaph Records, and a lot of it feels unfinished. Despite that, there are many memorable tracks on this album, including Ruling Me, Brave New World, and honestly, one of their best tracks ever, Trainwrecks. I get a smile on my face every time I hear those songs. But with their hits come their misses, including Smart Girls and Where's My Sex, which honestly, if you don't know the context behind the song, it's kind of creepy. I will say this is a significant step up from my previous entry, but it doesn't really stack up against their better releases. This album I give a 7.5 out of 10. In 8th place, we have Make Believe from 2005. Now, there are some things that I really like about this album, like the anthemic Perfect Situation and the haunting, no pun intended, Haunt You Every Day. This album has a downbeat tone, though, and a defeatist attitude, particularly with the track that everybody has heard, Beverly Hills, where Rivers sings about how he'll always be a loser and never as good as the stars in Hollywood. Some people love the song, but I personally skip it every time it comes on my radio. But overall, I can sit down and have a good time with this album, even if I skip track 1. Give this album a 7.5 out of 10. Lucky number 7 is the Red Album, which came out in 2008. Weezer took some risks on this album, and Rivers allowed other band members to do lead vocals on Automatic, where drummer Patrick Wilson is on lead, Cold Dark World, where bassist Scott Schreiner is on lead, and Thought I Knew, where rhythm guitarist Brian Bell is on lead. I like all 3 songs, but Thought I Knew and Cold Dark World are definitely must-hears. Other must-hears on the album are The Closer, The Angel in the One, and Pork and Beans, which is a great underdog anthem. Troublemaker and Everybody Get Dangerous are on the weaker end of the spectrum, but I have very fond memories jamming to this album. I give it an 8.5 out of 10. At 6, we have Weezer's 3rd album, Green, from 2001. This album is produced by the late Rick Ocasek, which is always a good thing, which we'll talk about later. This one has some cold hard classics, including Hash Pipe and the laid-back Island in the Sun. Other standouts include Photograph, no, this is not a Nickelback cover, and Oh Girlfriend and Simple Pages. There's really not a bad song on this work, but the only problem is it's a bit formulaic. Each song follows the same verse-chorus guitar solo that just plays the melody formula. Not a lot of experimentation on this one, but it's a great effort, and I give it a 9 out of 10. Into the top 5 now with the White Album from 2016. This one has the laid-back feel of Pacific Daydream, but doesn't lose its edge with its guitars. King of the World and Do You Want to Get High are amazing, and California Kids and LA Girls are the best combination of past and modern Weezer. The only real demerit on this one is the 3rd track, Thank God for Girls, which doesn't sound like anything on the album and is a case of audio whiplash. Still, that doesn't keep the White Album from being an absolute joy to listen to. I give it a 9 out of 10. In 4th is Weezer's 4th album, Maldrate, from 2001. This is arguably Weezer's most metal album. It hits hard with the great opener, American Gigolo, which goes right into the rip-roaring Dope Nose. This album is not for the person who goes to Weezer for soft, easygoing songs like Island in the Sun, and this is a rip-roaring good time. I love the hard-hitting guitars in songs like Take Control, and this album has the song, honestly, that I want to play as the first dance in my wedding called December. I hope my future wife is okay with that. There is not a bad song on this album, which honestly can be said for the rest of the entries on this list. This is a solid 9.5 out of 10. At number 3 is Everything Will Be Alright in the End from 2014. This is a breath of fresh air after 4 years of waiting after Hurley. This album has so many anthems such as Back to the Shack, where they apologize for going in a poppy direction, apology accepted. The most heart-wrenching track is Foolish Father, where Rivers tells the story of a girl who needs to forgive her father, which is sort of a callback to Say It Ain't So. Go Away is a great duet with Bethany Costanzo from Best Coast, and honestly, if you don't know about Best Coast, look them up because they are great. Honestly, I would start with California Nights if you're looking for a good place to start. Every song is a winner, and it's all capped off with the Future Scope Trilogy, which is a 3-song thank you to the fans. You may have heard the songs from the top 2 albums on my list, but if you get nothing else from this list, go listen to Everything Will Be Alright in the End because it's that good. 10 out of 10, no question, and again, it's the magic of Rick Ocasek. Alright, we've reached the main event. I think we all knew this was coming. What is going to be my number 1 album, Pinkerton or Blue? Well, let me start by saying they are both 11 out of 10s, and they are both classics, but yes, coming in at number 2 is Pinkerton from 1996. If you are, let's be honest, sexually frustrated and want to jam out, this album is for you. So many classics here, including El Scorcho, Tired of Sex, Why Bother, and Get You. This even includes one of my favorite songs of all time, Pink Triangle, where Weezer sings about falling in love with a girl who turns out to be a lesbian. The Good Life is so relatable in the way that everyone just wants to get away from the boring life and start living the good one. This is one of the few albums where I can press play and not skip a single track. Like I said, this is the definition of an 11 out of 10, but it's not Weezer's best album of all time, and by a hair, my number one pick is the Blue Album from 1994. I still remember the first time I bought this album and popped it into the CD player. I was instantly hooked. This is the album that never fails to put a smile on my face. I mean, it's got Buddy Holly, Say It Ain't So, Surf Wax America, Holiday, and the list goes on. It also has the best closing track in Weezer history and Only in Dreams, where the last 4 minutes is merely an instrumental and it is beautiful. The build is beautiful and the payoff is immaculate. Seriously, this may be the best debut album for a band all time, and that is saying a lot. If you want to know what Weezer is at their core, listen to this album and enjoy it. Totally an 11 out of 10. I would say it's the definition of perfect. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for more upcoming videos on music, and let me know your picks for the Weezer albums ranks in the comments below. Don't forget to share and subscribe if you like it, and I'll see you next time on Gabe on Music.